Australia has towns so isolated that if the road closes, life simply stops. And when I say isolated, I don't mean, oh, we only have one Starbucks. I'm talking about places where the nearest traffic light is 800 kilometers away, where Amazon Prime takes 3 weeks, and where going to town is literally an expedition that requires planning, provisions, and possibly a satellite phone. Australia is massive, like stupidly massive. It's about the same size as the continental United States, but with the population of Florida. So there's a lot of empty space. And somewhere in all that empty space, there are people who looked at a map, pointed to the most remote dot they could find and said, yeah, that'll do. Let's dive into some of these places where isolation isn't just a lifestyle choice. It's basically a survival skill. 8. Birdsville, Queensland. Population: about 115 people. Unless it's race weekend, then it balloons to 7,000, which must be absolutely terrifying for the locals. Birdsville sits on the edge of the Simpson Desert, about 1,600 kilometers west of Brisbane. To put that into perspective, it's like driving from Brisbane to Adelaide, except Adelaide is a rumor, mobile reception is a memory, and the horizon never changes. The town has one pub, the Birdsville Hotel, which is basically the social, cultural, and economic center of the entire region. If that pub closed down, Birdsville would essentially cease to exist as a functioning society. No pressure on the bartender or anything. The nearest hospital is 387 kilometers away in Windora, so if you have a medical emergency, you better hope the Royal Flying Doctor Service is having a good day, or you're going to have a very long, very uncomfortable drive while questioning all your life choices. But every September, Birdsville hosts horse races that attract thousands of people. Imagine living in a town of 115 people, and one weekend a year, 7,000 people show up. The entire town's population increases by over 6,000%. The porta potty companies must make their entire annual budget in that one weekend. 7. Coober, Pedy, South Australia. Population: around 1,700 people living underground like hobbits, but with more opal mining and less second breakfast. Coober, Pedy is famous for two things: producing most of the world's opals, and the fact that about 60% of residents live in underground homes called dugouts. And honestly, when summer temperatures regularly hit 50 degrees Celsius, living underground starts to sound pretty reasonable. The town is 845 kilometers north of Adelaide, and getting there involves driving through some of the most barren landscape you'll ever see. It's so desolate that they've filmed post-apocalyptic movies there, including Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, because apparently the location scout said, yeah, this looks sufficiently hopeless. There's an underground Serbian Orthodox church, underground hotels, and underground shops. If you're sensing a theme here, congratulations. You figured out Coober, Pedy's entire urban planning strategy. Fun fact: the town's name comes from the Aboriginal phrase Kupa Piti, which means white man's hole. I'm not making that up. The town's official slogan is basically hole where white people dig. You can't buy that kind of branding. 6. Innamincka, South Australia. Population: around 10 to 20 people, depending on who you ask and whether you count the tourists who got lost. Innamincka is located in the far northeast corner of South Australia, about 1,110 kilometers from Adelaide. It sits on Cooper Creek, which sounds lovely until you realize that the creek only flows occasionally, and the rest of the time it's just a dry, dusty reminder of water you once knew. This is the town that's famous for being the location where explorers Burke and Wills died during their ill-fated 1861 expedition across Australia. So that's the energy we're working with here. Come to Innamincka, where famous explorers came to die. The town exists primarily to service the oil and gas industry and occasional adventurous tourists who are driving the Strzelecki track. The nearest hospital? About 402 kilometers away. The nearest major shopping? Adelaide, 1,110 kilometers away. Need a new pair of shoes? Hope you really like online shopping and have patience, because that package is going to take a while. There's one pub, the Innamincka Hotel, which serves as the town's social hub, restaurant, accommodation, and probably therapy center, because what else are you going to do out here? The pub has better amenities than some small towns, including fuel pumps, because in this part of Australia, running out of gas isn't inconvenient. It's potentially life-threatening. 5. Boulia, Queensland. Population: about 300 people, all of whom have definitely seen the Min Min lights at least once. Or so they claim. Boulia is about 1,094 kilometers west of Townsville, sitting in the middle of Channel Country, a vast area of desert that occasionally floods, turning the entire region into an enormous inland sea. When that happens, the town basically becomes an island, cut off from the rest of civilization until the water recedes. It's like being isolated, but with a bonus round of even more isolation. The town is famous for the Min lights, mysterious floating lights that appear in the outback. Scientists say they're optical illusions caused by atmospheric conditions. Locals say they're something spookier. Either way, when you're 322 kilometers from the nearest sizable town, mysterious floating lights probably hit different. Boulia is so remote that it has its own annual camel races. That's right, camels. Because when you're this far from civilization, normal entertainment options like movie theaters aren't really available. So you might as well race camels. Why not? What else are you going to do on a Saturday? The nearest hospital with full services? Mount Isa, about 306 kilometers away. That's a 2.5-hour drive on a good day. On a bad day, with road conditions or weather, you might as well call a helicopter because you're not making that drive quickly. 4. Nullarbor Plain towns, that is Eucla, Nullarbor, border village. Population, combined, maybe 50 people who've all made peace with the fact that trees don't exist here. I'm grouping these together because they all share one thing in common. They're on the Nullarbor Plain, which is Latin for no trees. The name is not kidding. It's the world's largest single exposure of limestone bedrock, stretching for over 1,127 kilometers along the southern coast of Australia. Driving across the Nullarbor is a rite of passage for Australians. It's also a test of your bladder control, your marriage, and your tolerance for staring at absolutely nothing for hours on end. The Air Highway has the longest straight section of road in Australia, 145 kilometers without a single turn. You could literally fall asleep at the wheel and stay in your lane. Please don't do that. These tiny settlements exist purely to service travelers making the crossing between South Australia and Western Australia. They have roadhouses that sell fuel at prices that would make your wallet weep, accommodation that's basic but appreciated, and not much else. The remoteness is no joke. If you break down between settlements, you could be stranded for hours before another vehicle comes along. Cell phone coverage is non-existent for huge stretches. It's just you, the road, the occasional kangaroo, and the overwhelming realization of how small you are in the universe. Eucla, once a telegraph station, is now famous for its historic ruins that are slowly being consumed by sand dunes. It's the perfect metaphor for life on the Nullarbor. Everything eventually gets swallowed by nature. 3. Marble Bar, Western Australia. Population: about 200 people who voluntarily live in what was once the hottest town in Australia. Marble Bar is about 1,931 kilometers north of Perth, which is already pretty isolated. It's a former gold mining town that earned its reputation as Australia's hottest town by recording 160 consecutive days over 38 degrees Celsius back in 1923 to 1924. The town got its name from a bar of jasper rock that crosses the Coober River, which early settlers mistook for marble. So even the town's name is based on a mistake, which feels appropriate given that settling here in the first place was probably also questionable decision-making. The nearest hospital is in Port Hedland, 193 kilometers away. The nearest city with actual urban amenities? Perth, at 1,931 kilometers. That's a 14-hour drive, assuming you don't stop for anything except fuel and bathroom breaks. Why do people live here? Mining, mostly. The Pilbara region is one of the richest mining areas in the world, producing iron ore that gets shipped to China. So people endure the heat, the isolation, and the flies, yes, the flies, because the mining industry pays well enough to make it worthwhile. The town has one hotel, one general store, and one caravan park. That's pretty much it for amenities. If you need variety in your life, Marble Bar is not your place. But if you enjoy consistency, extreme heat, and solitude, welcome home. 2. Wittenoom. Population: officially 0, though the government had to enforce it. Wittenoom was the ghost town that won't die, and the government was not happy about it. Located in the Pilbara region, about 1,416 kilometers north of Perth, Wittenoom was once a blue asbestos mining town with a population of 20,000 in the 1950s. Then people figured out that blue asbestos is incredibly deadly. The town was officially closed in 2007, de-gazetted, meaning it's literally been removed from official maps. The government has demolished most buildings, removed it from road signs, and cut off power and water. They've done everything short of building a wall around it to keep people out. But in 2018, 3 residents remained. 3 people who refuse to leave, living in a contaminated town that the government insists should not exist. Water and power come from generators and tanks. Mail delivery? Stopped. Emergency services? They'll come, but you're signing a waiver first. The last resident was evicted in 2022. The health risks were real. Asbestos-related diseases killed thousands who lived or worked in Wittenoom. It was the most Australian form of stubbornness possible. When the government says you can't live here, naturally, you're going to die here out of principle due to the health risk. Getting supplies meant driving to Tom Price, about 241 kilometers away, or Newman, about 193 kilometers away. Both drives take you through Karajini National Park, which is stunningly beautiful, providing a surreal contrast to the deadly ghost town. 1. Giles Weather Station, Western Australia. Population: about 4 to 10 staff at any given time, all meteorologists who clearly love data more than civilization. Giles is a weather station located in the Great Victoria Desert, about 805 kilometers west of Uluru and roughly 2,736 kilometers from Perth. It's one of the most remote meteorological stations in Australia, established in 1956, and it's still operating today. The staff work on rotation, living in isolation for months at a time, collecting weather data in one of the most inhospitable environments in Australia. Temperatures can swing from below freezing at night to over 43 degrees Celsius during the day. The nearest town of any size is Laverton, about 563 kilometers away. Why would anyone do this job? Well, if you're a meteorologist who hates small talk, traffic, and other people in general, Giles is basically paradise. You get to focus entirely on weather patterns, atmospheric conditions, and not having to attend office birthday parties. The station is accessed by a dirt road that's often impassable after rain. Supply runs happen every few months, bringing everything from food to fuel. If you run out of something between supply runs, too bad. You're not driving 563 kilometers to the nearest store for a jar of peanut butter. Living here means your coworkers are your entire social circle. If someone has an annoying habit, you can't escape it. You're stuck with it 24/7 for months. It's either a recipe for lifelong friendships or psychological experiments on the limits of human tolerance. So there you have it, Australia's most isolated towns and settlements, where remote isn't just a description, it's a way of life. These places remind us that humans are incredibly adaptable creatures who will find a way to survive and even thrive in conditions that seem impossible. Whether it's living underground to escape the heat, staying in a government-decommissioned asbestos town out of pure stubbornness, or managing a cattle station the size of a small country, these Australians have figured out how to live with isolation that would drive most people absolutely insane within a week. Next time you complain about your commute or that your favorite restaurant is across town, remember that somewhere in Australia, someone's across town is an 800-kilometer drive through the desert where the gas station might be closed and your cell phone is just an expensive paperweight. Thank you for watching.